Welcome to another episode of Washington in Focus. I'm your host, Tim Clauser, with the Center Square's Western Washington reporter, Spencer Pauly. Spencer, you put out a story this week regarding the protest at a DHS facility in Tukwila the other day, and particularly this quote-unquote cryptic message that was sent to the Tukwila mayor, kind of warning them about what was about to unfold at the facility. Now, tell me a little bit more about what happened Saturday and what is this cryptic message?
Okay, so Saturday I was pretty busy covering the protest in Seattle as part of that No King's Day event that's happening across the country, right? So it wasn't on my radar what was happening just south in the city of Tukwila. Well, there was a protest that kind of escalated with protesters throwing projectiles at police officers and law enforcement. So, what happened here, right? How did this all start? So I reached out to Tukwila Mayor Thomas McLeod and asked, what do you know about this? What is your statement? He never got back to me, but on Monday night, he opened up his city council meeting with a statement on it. And what he said was that City Hall received a, quote, cryptic and confusing message late Friday afternoon that told people with pending immigration hearings to report to the Department of Homeland Security building on Saturday and Sunday to check in. If they fail to report, they'll be considered a violation. So the mayor sent that over to the Tukwila Police Department, who was unable to confirm the validity of the message and posted it was a transparent response on this on social media that, received conflicting information, noting that the facility is normally closed on the weekends. So what happened, right? So there's Federal Protective Service officers were essentially trapped in the Department of Homeland Security building by, I think, around 75 protesters. I remember correctly that were blocking the entrances with objects, I think like a street post, possibly line bikes like they're doing in Seattle outside the federal building and there. And so the Tukwila Police Department was called by the Department of Homeland Security to assess and clear the sidewalk and roadway. Police department was there for about 12 minutes and was able to clear the protesters from the entrances, and the protesters continued to do their thing on the side of the road.
Yeah. Now, tell me what were the protesters throwing at the officers? You said projectiles. That could mean a whole number of things.
Right.
And how did the Tukwila Police Department and these DHS officers respond to that?
Yeah, of course. So from what the police department reported, mind you, I wasn't there, so I'm not sure. But what they said was that there were frozen water bottles, rocks, and those kinds of projectiles were thrown, which can do some damage, right? So the Tukwila Police Department's, particularly their civil disturbance unit, along with Department of Homeland Security personnel, they deployed pepper spray and pepper balls were used to clear the crowd. Now, the Tukwila mayor noted that his police officers only used a limited number of pepper balls, but did not deploy tear gas, which was initially reported by other media outlets. So I think that's important to note because that's just kind of an escalation of crowd disbursement tools, right? So that is what the police department did, and they did not arrest anyone despite these projectiles being thrown at officers. So it's kind of an interesting thing to see out here in Washington. I see it with the Seattle police, where they're doing their best not to escalate it more. This is just, based on observations we're seeing in the LA, in Los Angeles, where they're using tear gas, flashbangs, and instead of getting the crowd to stop, we're seeing protests continue for over a week, right? And so it seems like right now, the police, law enforcement, Tukwila, Seattle, wherever else, is just doing their best to not escalate the situation. And that's, I think, what we're seeing here with pepper spray and pepper balls, just to clear the way for federal officers to go.
Yeah, I mean, I cover Spokane, and it reminds me of a situation that also happened there recently. On June 11th, there was a protest at a DHS facility there called by a former city council member who says that an immigrant, whether it be illegal or undocumented, that he had legal guardianship of, had reported for one of these mandatory check-ins awaiting their due process, these hearings. But when they showed up for these mandatory check-ins, instead of being able to leave afterwards ahead of their hearings, they were instead taken into custody by DHS and then transported to another federal detention facility over in Tacoma. So from my understanding, the people that were in Tukwila on Saturday, they were trying to prevent a similar thing. As you said, DHS was doing these check-ins. But I mean, what did the mayor say about this message? And were the police able to confirm this sort of advance warning to Tukwila about these check-ins?
No, because they don't know where this message came from. They were getting conflicting information, but there were federal, Department of Homeland Security employees within the building on Saturday. So there was some activity going on there within immigration enforcement. Now, the Tukwila mayor had to say, he assured that, the chief of police and he himself are committed to just transparency on what happened Saturday, and said they emphasized, like I've seen in other jurisdictions out here in Western Washington, that the Tukwila Police Department does not participate or assist with enforcement of federal immigration policies. So they leave the federal law enforcement to do their thing, but they do not assist. With that being said, what I saw from the Tukwila residents who spoke during public comment on Monday's city council meeting, majority of them were supported how the police department dispersed the crowd. They didn't escalate it and raised concerns about what we're seeing from ICE's immigration enforcement. With that being said, there were other Tukwila residents who said who pointed their frustration with the protesters who defiled the Department of Homeland Security building. People were calling the protesters anarchists and rioters that ruined the neighborhood with spray painting, blocking entrances, and just creating a scene in their neighborhood. So, I don't know, Tim. It's just like, where are we even getting at here? I just went on a tangent.
Yeah, I mean, there's just quite the back and forth. I mean, totally understand residents being concerned with property damage and what they see as a lack of respect for the country that they love and the president that they voted for, trying to protect these systems. But at the same time, you have a large number of people, especially in Washington, that whether or not they have a documented status or are legal immigrants, they think that they have a right to be here. And the means that they're willing to take to defend them it differs depending on the person. But it really makes me interested to see how we're going to move forward from this. I mean, there's been back-to-back protests over the last week, really several weeks, nationwide. And with the Trump administration doubling down on its deportation agenda, it doesn't look like these are going to stop anytime soon. I'm wondering, have you heard anything about upcoming protests in the Seattle area at this Tukwila facility? What do you expect moving forward?
It's funny you say that, Tim, because I haven't heard of any organized protests happening soon, right? If they are, they got to be very small in number. Now, I say that, but I wonder if I go down to the federal building in Seattle, if there will be people out there blocking the way, causing, a ruckus, I should say, outside, maybe continuing to block those entrances that they spray painted. The federal building right now is covered in graffiti and other damage to the property. And I don't think that has been cleaned up because these are still continuing, right? So whether it's just a small handful of people, that might be up for debate, but I do know that no protests are scheduled yet, but this could happen at any moment. I know that what we saw last week escalated pretty quickly, right? And that's when we saw last Wednesday when there was the protest near the federal building in Seattle that resulted in people launching fireworks into the police officers who were blocking the area. And then that's when it kind of escalated there with 8 arrests, I believe, that night. So, we'll see. We're recording this on Wednesday. Whether or not something happens tomorrow that triggers more protests, it could happen on a day-to-day basis. And that's what's kind of interesting, how fast this is escalating here with ICE's immigration enforcement and how Western Washingtonians are reacting to it.
Yeah, well, it seems like with the way the administration is moving and really the political climate across the country, anything could happen at this point. Well, Spencer, we appreciate you covering this protest and others over recent weeks, and we look forward to more coming from you as we go forward. But thank you to all the viewers who joined us today for another episode of Washington in Focus.